All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, tonight is the final debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And while I have absolutely no idea how things are going to go, one thing that I'm reasonably certain of is that President Trump is going to bring up the Hunter Biden story. Now, there's a lot of misinformation about that story itself, much of it from the mainstream media and so-called former intelligence officials. But the chief of misinformation about Hunter Biden's business, his emails and dealings is not Russia. It's Joe Biden, with a major assist from the mainstream media. Biden has lied about Hunter Biden's business dealings since before his son's recent emails came to light. In fact, his most brazen lie to date was during the very first presidential debate when Trump pressed him on the Senate Intelligence Committee's report, which found a litany of corrupt practices by Hunter, including a $3 million payment from the richest woman in Russia, an exorbitant bank account in China for personal expenditures, and a litany of other sketchy foreign connections. Well, when faced with that, what did Biden say? He just denied the report outright. Let's take a listen.
And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. Once you became vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow, and various other places.
True.
He made a fortune.
My son.
And he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he given tens of millions of dollars?
But he wasn't given tens of millions of dollars. That is totally discredited.
We've already been
totally discredited.
Totally discredited? Wow, there must be definitive proof that the Senate report is wrong. Wait, there's none. Not a scrap of any evidence that it's untrue. Now, there's not a scrap of evidence that Joe Biden knew about it at the time. And though I find it very hard to believe, I want to put that out there. But the underlying claim that Hunter Biden got filthy rich while his dad was VP, that's a fact. And it's a fact that Hunter Biden has even acknowledged to ABC News that he would never have gotten his board seat in Ukraine or many other jobs without his famous father's last name. Which brings us to today and the email story that I'm sure you're all sick of at this point. Many of the emails simply color in the lines to Hunter and Biden's corruption that we already knew. I have no illusions that they are a game changer of any kind and think that Trump focusing on stimulus negotiations and coronavirus would be far more effective in getting him reelected. But Joe Biden also could be our future president of the United States. And the media is brazenly letting him get away with outrageous lies whenever it comes to his family's grift. The exact same thing happened yesterday when Biden happened to do a rare interview with local TV station when he was actually asked about the emails. Let's take a listen.
Wisconsin's Republican Senator Ron Johnson put out a statement on Homeland Security letterhead saying Hunter Biden, together with other Biden family members, profited off the Biden name. Is there any legitimacy to Senator Johnson's claims?
None whatsoever. This is the same garbage Rudy Giuliani, Trump's henchman. It's the last-ditch effort in this desperate campaign to smear me and my family. Even the man who served with him on that committee, the former nominee for the Republican Party, said there's no basis to this. And, and the vast majority of the intelligence people have come out and said there's no basis at all. Ron should be ashamed of himself.
You heard that? The intelligence people have come out and confirmed that none of these claims are true. Once again, that is completely false, an outright lie. And it brings me to the media in their role in all this, in their refusal to not even fact check or call out any of this, but for inventing Biden's excuse in the first place. Where do you think Biden got the misguided notion that so-called intelligence people had discredited Hunter Biden's emails as a so-called Russian plot? He got it from the media, who refused to acknowledge that the Hunter Biden emails are very likely true and keep writing garbage stories like this one with so-called former intelligence officials who say that the email dump has, quote, all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. Okay, well, a quick perusal of that list actually tells me many of the people who signed this letter are literally on record having endorsed, you guessed it, Joe Biden. And again, these aren't even current intelligence officials. The current ones have very different and literally contradictory story to tell. We've played here for you the tape of the director of national intelligence saying there's zero evidence that the Hunter Biden laptop story is linked to Russian disinformation in any way. Well, we're getting even closer with information from the Washington Examiner reporting yesterday. Multiple officials within the FBI and DOJ do not believe the Hunter Biden laptop story is in any way connected to foreign disinformation. Furthermore, FBI has also confirmed that they're actually holding Hunter's laptop in question, as the store owner told us about concerning a subpoena that he issued in December 2019. So there you go. There's actually more evidence that the intelligence community thinks that the emails and the laptop itself are true than there is any shred of evidence that there is a foreign disinformation op that has been so-called discredited. Which leads me again to why any of this matters. You could rightfully say, yeah, Saagar, but Trump has a foreign bank account. Yep, I think that's disgraceful. And I'm very happy we live in a country where the New York Times can expose that and we can discuss it, as we will today on this show. But the problem I have is that Joe Biden is possibly about to be the next president of the United States, and that the media is so abandoning its standards that there is literally no telling what lies Biden and his administration will be able to get away with if they ascend to the presidency. Pretty much all they have to do is frame a story in a so-called anti-Trump way, and for the foreseeable future in Washington, the media will just give him a complete and total pass. Imagine a scenario like this one, where the Biden decides to keep troops in Afghanistan with an opaque deal with the Afghan government. All they have to say is that they're reversing Trump's policy, and I guarantee you he's going to get a pass. Same thing on tariffs, same thing on trade, same thing if he decides to declare a new Cold War against Russia for no particular reason. We cannot even begin to fathom the consequences of what the standards that are being set today will mean for us in the future. But all I know is that none of it bodes well for anyone who wants real answers from their government. And that's the part that I really can't get out of my head, Crystal, is think about, let's say just a couple days ago, got no attention, the Trump administration signed a New START, or has come to a deal with New START treaty with Russia about bringing down our nuclear arsenal. What if he reverses that? And he's like, nope, that's the Trump appeasement of Russia policy. We're coming in and we're going to stick it to him. I'd be like, no, that's terrible. Yeah. Same on Afghanistan, tariffs, trade. I mean, all he has to do is say it's good for Russia and it's anti-Trump, and elite media is just going to give this guy a pass. I mean, some of the things Trump has done are good, or even stood for, are good things, and yet doesn't matter.
That's actually a really interesting point that I hadn't fully thought through the implications of in the Biden era, and I think you're 100% correct, because we already see the way that they've fully turned off their brains, so that literally every single thing that Trump does is bad. No matter what it is, no matter if it's the same thing Barack Obama did, no matter if it's different from what Barack Obama did, no matter what it is. And look, I think on balance, most of the things that Trump has done are bad, as we discuss on this show, as I discuss on this show, but not every single thing. And so, yeah, when you have no principles and your only guiding light is basically opposition to Trump, that's exactly where you end up. And that is where not only the media has ended up, but a lot of liberals and certainly all the never-Trumpers, like, they have been the vanguard of creating this dynamic where the only operating principle is, what did Trump do? I'm for the opposite.
Yes.
So I think a lot of the dynamic will play out that way. And you're right to point out, too, on the Hunter Biden story. I mean, first of all, if Trump actually wanted this story to land and people to take it seriously, he should have approached it in a radically different way than he did.
I agree.
And in particular, the biggest Rudy Giuliani being involved whatsoever at this point is a problem in and of itself.
We'll talk about Rudy later.
We're going to get to Rudy later as well. But also, the biggest mistake that he made and that the New York Post made, if they wanted people to take this story seriously on the merits, was conflating Hunter's struggle with addiction and his personal issues with the business dealings and the corruption that implies. And that's allowed Biden, you play the debate moment where he's able to be like, to actually achieve the moral high ground by being like, my son, like millions of Americans, struggles with addiction.
Many of whom voted for Trump, by the way.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's a whole other thing, a whole other problem that we're barely even talking about or dealing with. But so the Trump people did themselves no favors in terms of getting people to take this seriously, and they always overstate the case of what it is and say they're a crime family, et cetera. This is not an electoral issue anymore. And that's the point you make in your radars. Like, this is a governance issue.
Yes.
This is about, okay, if you are the next president, what is that going to look like with Hunter and your other family members? And how is that going to impact your dealings around the world? This is maybe the answer is not at all, but this is something that we should have knowledge of and that we should have full awareness and transparency of, just like we should have that with Donald Trump, and we do not whatsoever. Those same standards should be applied with Joe Biden. And yeah, the media has been so nervous about giving him a hard time about anything because they're so terrified of the reaction, this like whiplash reaction, backlash reaction of, oh my God, you can't press Joe Biden because you're helping Trump. You're helping Trump get elected. No one wants to be that journalist that if Trump did get reelected, gets blamed for it for having any critical coverage of Joe Biden whatsoever.
Let me give everybody an example from history, actually. So LBJ, there are a lot of things that we knew about LBJ whenever he was vice president, and there were a lot of stories that were about to run about his impersonal corruption. Same thing happened right whenever JFK was becoming president. But the media decided to give him a pass. They were like, we feel bad for this guy. You know, JFK got assassinated. Let's root for the president and all of that. And they slept on Vietnam for 3 straight years. And when they woke up, we had 500,000 troops there, and we had hundreds of troops dying there every single week. They did it because it's the same thing. The media right now hates Trump, so they want to do everything they can to help Biden. But when you do that, you make a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
You make it so that you will not cover substantively what the Biden administration is going to do in its first 2 years. And we all know this. We are at a great turning point in our history. And if we do not have the real scrutiny that we need, you can end up in quagmires real quick. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, the moment you start coloring your coverage with, like, who does this help?
Yep.
And do I want to be on the side of, like, even appearing to help Trump? It's all over.
It really is. All right. I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.